We'll give it about 30 seconds or so for everyone to join in and settle down for today's exciting webinar. We've got Sami here from IBM, who's the product manager for AI Assistant for Planning Analytics, a tool that we all love. All right, let's see people joining in. Give it a few more seconds as people are joining in from all over the world in this one. We've had a very high number of registrations, so obviously the topic is exciting and topical for everyone at the moment. All right, let's kick it off. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We've got Sami here from IBM, who's a product manager for IBM Planning Analytics AI Assistant. So that's a bit of a mouthful. I'm Amendra Pratap. I'm the founder of Octane Software Solutions, IBM partner based in Australia. I'm also IBM champion, and I proudly lead a team that works with some of the most complex and high-performing finance teams in the region. Today, we are here to talk about something transformative. It's not just another product update, but a real leap into how finance teams will engage with their data, not just today, but in the future as well. At Octane, we've been delivering IBM Planning Analytics, or TM1, for almost a decade. We've been modernizing the TM1 platforms, building enterprise level forecasting, budgeting applications, and improving the reporting across the enterprise. And we find ourselves increasing at the forefront of AI adaptation in finance, which is very exciting. Whether it's your largest media company, largest investment bank, or the best performing airline in the region, you will find us there working with the finance teams in doing the analytics and automation and to provide insights to the execs. Our strength lies in the intersection of deep finance product knowledge as well as the cutting edge technology, especially where AI and planning analytics come together. And we'll see more of that today. Today's topic is to put the spotlight on a new product that IBM's come out with, which is AI Assistant in IBM Planning Analytics. It's not just a chatbot, it's a context aware AI agent trained specifically on PA. It understands our models, the data, the cubes, the business language. We can simply use natural language to ask questions to get it to do things as well within the model. It's intuitive, fast, and grounded in your TM1 data. This is AI for finance people, not just data scientists. It will remove all the friction that we have between the questions and the answers. No more digging through the cubes, recreating views, dumping into Excel, and things like that. You ask and it will deliver. What it means is that traditionally TM1 has been a very powerful tool, but sometimes the adaptation or the learning curve is a bit high. This will remove the learning curve of average users, product managers, CFOs, your business partners being able to interact directly with the cubes, the data, without needing to learn TM1, the MDX, or slice views, or anything like that. This will seamlessly uplift your organization's AI capability. So, before I hand over to Sami, one more thing I will mention is that IBM has really come to the party with this product and it's priced very, very competitively. So if you like what you see today, do get in touch with us and we will walk you through and tell you how to get access to this product. What are the limitations? What is the actual benefits that our other clients are getting out of it? And we will be able to walk you through whether you need to just have a conversation, are looking at doing a POC, or discuss more about the costing side of things. Without taking too much of your time, I'll now hand over to Sami to take us through and showcase the product as well as take us through the roadmap. Thank you, Sami.
Thank you, Amendra. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sami. I'm a product manager on the Planning Analytics team, and I've got a lot of content to cover for you in terms of the AI direction when it comes to the generative and agentic space, and I'll even touch a little bit on predictive as well. I've got a lot of content to cover, and I'll share my screen in a second. Please leave your questions in the chat. I'll do my best to get to them towards the end of the session. All right, you should be seeing my beautiful title slide of my presentation deck. So as I said, I've got a lot to cover in terms of the generative and agentic space, and I'll touch a little bit on predictive. To give you a lay of the land as the way this presentation is going to flow, I've got a few slides just to kind of set the stage as we move forward. I'm going to lean heavily into live demos. I'm going to be using some development environments as well to be able to show you some of the new things that are coming down the road. And we'll talk a little bit about the roadmap, both for generative and agentic as well. All right. Starting at a high level, of course, everything starts and ends with planning analytics. Our vision and our goal is to enable organizations to drive future-ready business performance with an integrated and easy to manage and extensible planning and analytics application anywhere. And while that just rolls off the tongue, the way that it translates to me is really around 4 or 5 pillars that I want to touch on. And the first pillar is really about our reporting interfaces, right? Planning Analytics Workspace being our web interface, and we invest heavily in Planning Analytics for Excel as well. And then from there is our engine, our TM1 engine, which is best in class for in terms of enterprise level scalability. Now, it's been around for over 40 years, and that's not a mistake. At the end of the day, when we say scalability with the TM1 engine, we really mean for complex use cases where data is growing and you need to have an application that can perform alongside that. At the end of the day, data is not normally what you see in sample models where every value is filled in and every parameter has an output. The most data is filled with missing values and cell intersections without proper outputs. And so having an engine that can scale alongside that, like TM1, is really powerful for those use cases. The third is really about our deployment strategy, which is really around be wherever you need us to be. So whether you're local or whether you're in the cloud or whether you're hybrid with Cloud Pak for Data, if you want a cloud hosted solution on the IBM cloud, we have that for you. And if you want a solution that's built from the ground up for hyperscalers, we have Planning Analytics as a service that's available on AWS as well as Azure as well. And then finally is our kind of purpose-built for your context approach. Planning analytics is planning agnostic, whether you're financial planning, HR planning, supply chain planning. We have something for everybody across those use cases. And then the last pillar that I'll touch on, which is the fifth pillar, is really our offering strategy when it comes to application delivery. We release roughly every single month. So that means that new features, conformance updates, fixes are always on the way. And we're really proud of that. As you can tell in the AI space, things move really quickly, even if you're talking something about as old as planning processes. And AI and in planning still move very, very quickly. And our ability to keep up is really contingent on our delivery cycle as well. And if you look at the planning analytics focus areas for 2025, there's 3 main pillars. Pillar number 1 is really around service modernization, which is really about making things more scalable and available along the way. So whether you're talking about the planning analytics services and making them scalable, data source connectivity and expanding to as many data sources as possible, supporting our customers in that capacity, making planning analytics as available as possible, whether it's across data centers, etc., and even investments in our APIs for the backend, right? Whether our existing REST APIs and even our PAW content APIs that we're working on so that you can deliver content in PAW through API as well. On the right-hand side of the screen, if you skip the middle section, is really around business owned. So that's really the flip side of the first pillar. And where the first pillar is about making the infrastructure more available and vibrant, business owned is really about making it more self-service, easier to use, less about the power user and more about the casual and intermediate analyst and consumer of data. And then in the middle, bridging those two gaps is really AI. So whether you're talking predictive AI with multivariate forecasting and univariate forecasting, or our investments in generative AI and agentic AI, we're really diving into that space as well. And that's basically where I'm going to dive on as we move forward. Now, the IBM Planning Analytics Assistant is our first foray into the generative AI space. And it all started with a few conversations that I want to kind of walk you through in terms of how the strategy came together. As you know, as well as I do, as well as Amendra does as well, there's 1,000,002 different assistants that exist at any given point when it comes to planning and productivity applications. So we needed to be very smart in terms of what we were doing, who we were doing it for, and why we were doing it. At a high level, we wanted to marry the best of both worlds, right? The best of planning analytics in terms of its ability to reduce your forecasting effort or improve your operational performance, and marry that with the power of Watsonx, being a platform that's open, trusted, built on governance, of course, targeted from a use case standpoint and empowering from a customization standpoint. And so from there, that led to a few other conversations that I'll walk you through. Number one is we wanted to make sure it was available. As I'm sure our customers across the spectrum, they care about data residency and availability of that data. And so as of actually this month, earlier this month, we've made the PA assistant and the runtime that the system uses, the Watsonx large language model runtime that the assistant uses, available in every single region where Planning Analytics on Cloud and Planning Analytics as a Service is supported. So wherever you are there's a data center on IBM Cloud that supports the Planning Analytics Assistant use case, so that you don't have to worry about your data leaving the associated region. And of course, we wanted to make it as available as possible. We offer it as part of our cloud trial. It's available on TechZone for our sellers, and it's available for proof of platform if you're interested in planning analytics as well. And then from there, we asked, okay, so how are we going to deliver this? And we wanted a simple, elegant, secure approach to connectivity. So we went with an IBM managed approach for the Planning Analytics Assistant. The idea being is that, as you can see with these three rectangles, as long as you have a browser and the entitlements to Planning Analytics and the Planning Analytics Assistant, and you can connect to our instance of Watsonx, which is in the cloud, then you have access to all the features I'm about to show you today and the features that would be part of the PA Assistant roadmap. And so with that in mind, it's really important that we wanted to deliver something that was low barriers to adoption, that didn't require our customers to have to own and manage everything in order to leverage generative AI capabilities. And then from there, we said, okay, so who are we delivering this thing for? And everything I'm about to show you today, in terms from a demo standpoint from the PA Assistant, goes back to this slide. It's really about improving ease of use, as Amendra noted earlier on the call, explainability, whether it's explaining PA data, PA systems, widgets, artifacts, etc., and content and data manipulation. The idea that you should be able to use natural language alongside large language models to not only find your data tables, but create usable content from it. And so who we're delivering these features for is really across the spectrum, whether you're talking to business leaders or the knowledge workers. We're trying to provide a little something for everybody. And so from here, I'd like to kind of pivot into my first demo, which is to show you some of the capabilities of the assistant. And while a lot of these kind of overlap across these key themes, I'll show you a little bit, a few features of each that cross all. So let me go ahead and go into my planning environment. I'm just gonna, oops, yeah, right here. That's my backup environment. So let me just refresh, make sure that my environment's still fresh. And I'm assuming that you're seeing my Planning Analytics workspace dashboard. So for those who are unfamiliar, this is Planning Analytics Workspace. It's our web tool for dashboarding. And what you're seeing here is a very simple profit and loss dashboard. It's nothing too complicated. I use this as just a simple way to show some of the features of Planning Analytics Assistant and how they can help our users. Now, one thing I want to note is how you access the assistant. So first of all, actually, let me take a step back and touch on this. In terms of a deployment strategy, the Planning Analytics Assistant is available for our cloud users, whether you're PAOC, Planning Analytics on Cloud on the IBM Cloud, Planning Analytics as a Service on Azure or on AWS, and we even support Planning Analytics local users, whereas some of our competitors lean heavily towards their SaaS customers. We want to make sure we're delivering something for everybody. And so if we go back here for a second, while it's not an air-gapped approach, as long as, even if you're on Planning Analytics local, if this is your PA local instance, as long as you can connect to a browser that can connect to our instance of Watsonx, then you have access to the Planning Analytics Assistant, and we walk you through that as part of the onboarding process. So while it is available for Planning Analytics local, it is a hybrid approach, and so unfortunately, it's not an air-gapped one. But I'll touch on that later as we get into the agentic piece of the roadmap. But back to the demo at hand. So with the Planning Analytics Assistant, once it is enabled, basically, at the end of the day, once it's enabled, you'll access it with two different capabilities, whether it's the on-demand AI actions, as you can see here with this AI operations button here, and you can click it to access some of the cool features of the Planning Analytics Assistant. And we offer, of course, a chat interface or a command interface that you can use to do either planning analytics tasks, like things like creating calculations, creating sandboxes, swapping rows and columns, converting the charts, et cetera, alongside kicking off some of the generative AI features. And so I'm going to go through a few features just to kind of whet the appetite about what the Planning Analytics Assistant can do today. One of the first features that we released was chart insights. And the idea being is that if I want to dig deeper into what the data behind this chart is telling me, I can simply ask something like, tell me about this chart. And what it's going to do is it's going to kick off our first feature in our flow, which is chart insights. Now, chart insights, the whole goal, as I said, is to tell you a little bit about the data behind the chart. So it's not just looking at the chart, it's looking at the data and the metadata behind it. And it's providing you a summary in natural language that calls out things like trends, insights, and so on and so forth. And we offer those insights in two capacities. Number one is a long form summary, and number two is what I call the meat and potatoes. Now, the let me see if I can hide this. Perfect. Now, one of the things you're going to notice here is with the key points summary is that it breaks things out into bulleted points. Not every time that you want your insights do you want to read paragraphs of text. Sometimes you just want to know exactly what it's trying to tell you, right? And of course, with AI, the richer the data, the richer the insights, of course. But the reason that I wanted to show this version of the output is to talk about data security and data privacy. So how does this thing work? Okay. Of course, our customers are really worried. Hey, are you training IBM models on our data? What are you doing with our PII, et cetera, et cetera? And what models are you using, et cetera, et cetera? So first thing I want to call out is how this thing works. So as we mentioned at the first slide, TM1 engine is one of the more powerful engines on the market, especially from a calculation standpoint, right? So we lean heavily into the TM1 engine to create the calculation that are fed into the analysis. This is a really good example because basically for this, we extract descriptive statistics or metadata in the form of these kind of descriptive statistics, wrap it in a query that gets sent to the Watsonx, to the appropriate Watsonx model. Once the output is generated, the traces are removed from the Watsonx side. So two things are happening. Number one is your raw data never leaves TM1. We extract this metadata using TM1. Then we wrap that in a query, and once the output is generated from the Watsonx side, traces are deleted from that side. So none of the models are trained. So your raw data never moves, and none of the models are trained on your data. Obviously, some data has to move in order for the service to render, but we try to be very careful about what data is leaving and how much of it as well. Another thing I want to call out is our commitment to transparency in AI. In every feature that I'm going to show you as part of the PA Assistant, you'll see this AI icon or AI card. And this is part of IBM's commitment to transparency in AI, to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit about what the magic is happening behind the scenes. Even with this one, you can see a short summary about the feature itself, along with a step-by-step in terms of how it works. Where there's more documentation about the feature, we link it as well, in addition to documentation on the large language model that was used. All of the models that are used within the PA Assistant are IBM Granite models. That's important to note, but not necessarily the same model for every single feature. And of course, you can always regenerate your summaries for wording. At the end of the day, large language models are good at language, right? So if you're uncomfortable with the wording or you want to be able to regenerate the summary to adjust the wording a little bit based on the same exact query, then that's something that you can always do. And to the left of that, you'll see that there's a copy icon as well. And you can always copy any of the summaries and bring them into your canvas as a static text widget for further editing and refinement from there. And of course, once this loads, you'll see that you'll be able to also cycle through the drop down here, crossing between the chart series as well. Now, I don't have my legend exposed here, but it would map to the legend, and I'll show that later in the next demo as well. And of course, this was the copy icon to be able to copy. But that was just our first feature, just to show a little bit about ease of use with the PA Assistant using chart insights and natural language and Watsonx. Let's move on a little bit from there and talk a little bit about explainability. So a few features I want to call out in explainability. So first, one of the first features we introduced was outlier analysis. So the idea is that you should be able to find the outliers within a cube view such as this one, and the system should be able to call them out for you and explain them to you to the best of its ability. And so I'm just going to kick it off from here just to show you that you can do it through both. So simply kicking off outlier analysis. I could have also asked, are there any outliers with the appropriate scope selected? But basically what you see here is a couple of things. Number one, front and center, you see a chart that calls out the outliers in question. And beneath that, you see a natural language summary that calls out how many outliers there were, what those values were, whether they represent trends or outliers or single isolated events in your data, and more. And it's all about the data that's being fed into the cube view. You can always view this as a line chart if that's your personal preference. We also offer, obviously, outliers can be calculated in a number of different ways. For the first release of this feature, we actually offer 7 algorithms out of the box. Some of them only show up depending on the number of data points and the type of time series. But we tried to support as many of them as we saw in the wild when it came to our customer usage, whether it was Turkey, Z-score, Ensemble, etc. And you can, of course, cycle between the chart series here, and you can even show what it would look like if the outlier was corrected here. And you'll notice that the summary will render to show you what that range change was and how it impacts your data. And of course, it takes the appropriate algorithm into account along the way. Now, I am touching a little bit on the roadmap here, but this was phase one of our feature, an outlier analysis. We've got a couple other things planned for it in terms of a better view of the overall flow. So we want to tie this back to the exploration view as well. Another thing we wanna do is a bring your own outlier criteria, which we want to deliver in the second half of this year. So we got a lot of feedback that our customers say, hey, listen, Sami, the Tukey is awesome, Z-score is incredible, but to us, anything greater than 10% period over period is an outlier, or anything greater than X value is an outlier, or anything greater than rolling X% of rolling 3 months is an outlier. We want to be able to have you leverage that before we kind of render the appropriate outlier analysis and the natural language summary as well. Now, of course, you can always copy and regenerate the summary, and you can even view the AI card, which, as the other one calls out a little bit about the feature, there's more information about the feature itself to cover what these algorithms are, et cetera, for example, about the feature, as well as the large language model that was used in the output of this summary. Now, let me pivot into a couple of features that are my favorite features when it comes to explainability in the PA Assistant. Number one is called Explain Cell. So explain cell, the whole point of explain cell is if I'm an analyst and I'm looking at a cube view, if I'm looking at a simple cube view that's largely made up of consolidations like this, it might be very intuitive for me to understand what this cell intersection value really means. But if I'm getting into a little bit more of a meteor cube view, I might be interested more in a particular cell intersection. And at this point, I might want to understand where this value came from, for example, how this value was calculated. So simply right-clicking on that value and clicking on explain cell does a couple things for us. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the trace cell of the feature showing you the lineage in terms of how that value is outputted. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see a natural language summary that breaks out the syntax and breaks out the purpose of that calculation. This is a variance calculation. And in terms of how the syntax is rendering the output. You'll also notice a couple of things. Of course, you can always regenerate for wording and copy. You can immediately add this as a cell comment directly into the cell so that it's time-stamped if you so choose, such as this. And then from there, we also offer links where the IBM documentation can help fill in some of the gaps in terms of planning analytics specific references. We offer documentation here. Now, again, I'm touching a little bit on the roadmap as well, but what you're seeing here was phase one of the feature. The next phase of the feature is to tie it to the transaction log. So right now it supports calculations and model logic, as you see here. And in addition, it supports consolidations as well. It'll summarize what the consolidation is, how many members it made up, et cetera, et cetera. From there, the next step for me is the transaction log. So if Amendra and I are working together and I had done some funny business at the leaf level of the data, he should be able to tell by using this feature what those last changes were and who made them so that he knows who to chase and when he needs to chase them. And so the vision of this feature is really kind of a where did this value come from type of feature. And so this is the kind of direction that we're heading. In the medium term, another thing that we want to add to this feature is delving more into the runtime aspect of the analysis. So right now we break down what that syntax is and how it translates into natural language, but we also want to deliver on the runtime as well. If the user wants to know at the end of the day not only how it works, but that at the end of the day this whole thing was just a calculation that was 10 times 10 divided by 2, for example, we want to be able to lean into that as well. And these are just some of the things we have planned for this explain cell feature. The other one I want to show you in terms of explainability is actually, this is why I'm using a development environment, is one that's actually scheduled to release later this month. And that's forecast insights. So building on the chart insights and marrying it to the explainability that you just saw, we want to leverage generative AI alongside predictive analytics. And so as many of you know, we offer 3 types of forecasting. We offer multivariate forecasting, time series or univariate forecasting, as well as baseline forecasting. Now, multivariate and univariate can be done very on demand, as you can see here directly from the dashboard. And simply selecting the forecast icon, I could kick off a univariate forecast. But now with the update that we're getting ready to release this month, you get a new view when you kick off the preview of that forecast. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll still see the statistical details alongside the forecasted chart as well. That doesn't change. But we did get a lot of feedback that many of the users don't really understand the trends behind the forecasted values, as well as B, the model logic or the accuracy behind the forecasted model. What do these measures mean, and what do they mean for a natural for a kind of more casual or intermediate user? And that's really where this feature value comes from. Is we render a natural language summary that covers a little bit about the forecasted value in terms of the trends, the seasonality, etc., and any outliers that you might be able to pick up on. Again, picking up on the outlier analysis feature as well, and tying that generative functionality into the predictive analytics feature, and then breaking it down the model accuracy details with any sort of insights and recommendations that you could potentially use to further improve your forecast going forward. If outliers were detected, they would have shown up in this tab here, and I would have had the ability to adjust the outliers as I normally do today. And this is actually a feature that also got released recently, is the ability to download all of the forecasted values and that information as a CSV. Now, if we go back here, so now we talked a little about ease of use. We talked a little bit about explainability. Let's touch a little bit about content and creation and using natural language to find your data tables. So a couple of releases ago, we released what we call the Data Explorer. So the idea being was to help you find your data tables using natural language. And so kicking off the Data Explorer, you can cycle between the databases that you have enriched, and there is an enrichment or an analysis flow in the modeling workbench where you can actually go in and based on an individual cube or across a database, you can analyze the data. And what it does is it creates these kind of descriptive tags that feeds features like this, as well as other features that are coming on our roadmap. But down the line, in the medium term, we want it so that you don't even have to select the database. But for the first release, you have to select the database for which your data table lies in, or that data lies in. But even in the first release, you don't necessarily have to know which cube you're in. If you wanted to cycle between them, you could. If you wanted to see, if you wanted to be a little bit more pointed on your question. But the real magic comes from this in the kind of auto select capability. And even typing something like show me sales by city for, let's say, 2021. Now, what it's doing on the back end, as I said, that there is an enrichment flow that's associated with this. And what it's doing on the back end is it's going across the cube data that has been enriched or analyzed in the 24 retail database, and it's stitching this view together for me. So this is actually one of the value adds that I really wanted to push for the MVP. You don't have to have your view created in order for us to be able to stitch it together for you. And even with this one was stitched together for us on the fly as we kind of rendered it. And when it's rendered, what you see is 3 main sections of this output. Number 1 is a trace cell in terms of which cube this came from, etc., alongside your query, and alternative cubes that could answer your question as well. Selecting these will actually populate up to 3 different tabs alongside the top that you can cycle between. Here you have a kind of semi-interactive cube view. If I have a leaf level data, I can make changes to it, and I can of course change some of the context, as you can see here. And then below here, I have a natural language summary that calls out how it got to that view that I'm looking at right now, what it matched against based on the query that I output, and what it defaulted to based on things that I omitted or things that I specified that did not exist in the data. This is just so you have the information by your side. If you felt like you got the wrong analysis or the wrong view and you wanted to understand where it came up with that view to ask your question in a different way, this is that information for you. But the idea is simple, is that once you get to a view that you're comfortable with and you want to kick off your analysis, you can simply insert it into your book. And now from here, I could change this into a chart. I can pull the chart insights. I can do the explain cell pieces, et cetera, et cetera. One of the cool things that we found as we kind of went along the generative AI roadmap is as we added new features, these kind of flows started to stack up on top of each other. And we're really excited as we continue to add features there as well. So that's a little bit about the PA assistant as it exists today. Let's talk a little bit about the roadmap and delve a little bit. I got a second demo about the agentic capabilities that I'm sure everybody's been hearing about when it comes to Watsonx Orchestrate. But before I delve into that, I want to explain what our AI strategy looks like. Our strategy is really made up of 3 pillars right now when it comes to the generative and agentic space. And I want everybody to kind of make sure I want to harp on this a little bit. I'm going to spend a little time on this. There's 3 pillars to our strategy. The first pillar is what you saw up to now. Up to this slide, what you saw now with the Planning Analytics Assistant, that's the first pillar. And we're going to keep investing in that space. And why it's the first pillar is because it fits a certain use case. The Planning Analytics Assistant is about a low barriers to adoption, right? Low barriers to entry. So you don't need to own everything or manage everything, et cetera, as I showed you earlier in the slide deck. And it's about getting AI into planning analytics. So if you notice, planning analytics was your world, right? It was planning analytics data, the interface was planning analytics, et cetera, et cetera. And that is a very strong use case. And what it does is we're trying to bring AI into PA for what generative AI is generally good at doing with structured data. Help me with ease of use, explainability, content and data creation and manipulation, etc. And we've got a robust roadmap, as you see, with forecast insights. And we've got a couple other things that I touched on as well. And I'll touch on a couple more as part of our roadmap for this year. But we are heavily investing in that space, the managed IBM Planning Analytics Assistant functionality. Then we're getting ready to release our integration story for Pillar 2, which is our integration story with Watsonx Orchestrate. Our integration story with Watsonx Orchestrate, for those who are unfamiliar, Watsonx Orchestrate is essentially an AI orchestration platform. It marries generative AI with orchestration capabilities. So where you want to leverage AI across use cases or across deployment strategies or across data sources or data across data sources and unify all of those under an AI agent or a unified chat experience using Watsonx Orchestrate, that's where that value comes from. And I'll show you the demo around that just to give you an idea of some of the things that would be capable in that space. But between pillar 2 and pillar 3 is really trying to make that easier to adopt and easier to use. So with Watsonx Orchestrate, they have what is called a flow builder, where you create these kind of flows that exist across applications that you're trying to orchestrate. And so we want to try to make that easier by providing pre-built tools and pre-packaged agents for specific use cases, like a scenario planning agent to leverage our sandboxes capability, or even a forecasting agent to leverage our forecasting capabilities, etc., and the appropriate tools to go alongside that. So where the pillar 1 was about bringing generative AI into planning analytics for what generative AI is generally good at doing with structured data, pillar number 2 is about bringing PA into AI. So where PA isn't necessarily your world, but you're trying to leverage planning analytics data, planning analytics security on that data, and planning analytics features and functionality alongside other applications and other AI implementations in a unified chat experience. And let me show you what that looks like with the example we showed of a proof of concept of a tax agent that we demoed at Think recently. So you should be seeing my my Chrome browser here. This is a proof of concept. I'm going to try to do this live for you, but this is a proof of concept that we put together just to show the art of the possible when it comes to Watsonx Orchestrate and Planning Analytics Assistant. So the idea here is that with the first thing that I want you to notice is that this is not planning analytics. To those who are familiar, this is actually IBM Controller Web, which is our sister product that's focused on financial consolidations. The reason that I'm using controller web is not because you need controller web to leverage this technology. It's because this is a tax use case where, in this case, I'm a tax analyst and I'm looking at my 2024 consolidations and I'm planning the year's taxes basically. And so from there, what the idea here is that wherever this chat, the Watsonx Orchestrate chat, can be embedded, which is virtually any web page, you would now have planning analytics by your side, whether it's planning analytics data, security on that data, or features where you can orchestrate it alongside other applications. So we're going to start off by asking a question. But let me tell you the 3 data sources that are being orchestrated in this process. So there's information that's coming from a sample database, tax repository through Watsonx Orchestrate on public tax compliance, as this is a tax use case. There is a sample repository with Watson Discovery that's just based on a sample company that we put together just to move the demo forward. In this case, I'm a company in the European Union. I'm headquartered in Hungary, so I might have to pay attention to regulations across my country and my European Union as well. And then the third piece is information coming from Planning Analytics in terms of expected taxable income. And I'm going to start off simply by asking a question, which is, what is my tax rate? And I'm going to zoom in here because my eyesight's not that great. And what it's going to do is it's going to lean into the first 2 repositories that we spoke of, right? The tax repository on public tax knowledge and the repository about my company. And it's going to tie those 2 things together, right? And that's kind of what orchestration is about. I have data sources and AI in separate places, and I want to unify them for my users under one experience. And we want planning analytics to be part of that. So even with this, it notices that it calls out regulations like Pillar 2, et cetera, that might be a little bit interesting to the user or relevant to the user who's kind of going through this analysis. One of the things that we lean into heavily in this space is what we call human in the loop AI, or progressive disclosure. Where possible, we want to be able to populate where this information came from. Where something might be ambiguous, like Pillar 2, we want to populate where that information came from. And with Watsonx Orchestrate, you can easily do that as well. But that's all well and good. The question now becomes, so how much do I owe in 2025? Now I can type this out, but let's keep the pill flow going. And now what we're doing is we're tying it back to the third repository, which is the information coming from Planning Analytics in terms of expected taxable income, this 800 million euros here. And so now we have the 3 pieces of information that are being orchestrated across alongside each other with a breakdown calculation that occurs on the Watsonx side that breaks down how what you could potentially expect to pay for your taxes in 2025 with a short summary right afterwards. And this is just to show how orchestration works in terms of, I still haven't gone into planning analytics for any of this. I'm still in my unified chat experience using Watsonx Orchestrate, but I can always leverage planning analytics. Now, we saw data going in from planning analytics into Watsonx Orchestrate with this 800 million euros, but we can also push data backwards, right, into planning analytics. And this is just to show you that not only can things flow both ways, but you also have planning analytics by your side. Now, I won't focus too much on this. It's not the prettiest cube view in the world, but it is to show you that you have planning analytics by your side, and it would have been entered into the income plan row here. And this is fully functioning planning analytics. But again, I did not need to go into planning analytics. I just always have that information by my side. And from there, right, I said that this is a great use case to leverage PA data, PA security on the data, and PA features as well. And you can even kick off a forecast using Watsonx Orchestrate with the appropriate agents and skills, or agents and tools for that matter. My apologies. And so what it's done here is it's actually run the appropriate forecast in Planning Analytics and generated the preview, and it populated the preview as images here. Now, obviously, as Orchestrate improves, this is going to get more interactive with things like tooltips on hover and drills, etc. But even with this, you have the ability to just kind of reference just very quickly what that forecast looks like. And as always, you have planning analytics by your side. Now, I'm going to render this report, not because, again, I want to show you that planning analytics by your side, but to drive home what I think is one of the most important points of this presentation, is that generative AI and agentic AI, they go hand in hand, right? Even if you're in the agentic space with Watsonx Orchestrate, you have the ability to leverage all of the planning analytics assistant features as you need them, whether it's chart insights, as you can see here, or explain cell, or any of the other features that are in market and part of our PA Assistant roadmap. And that's why we're investing in both. So the Planning Analytics Assistant is going to be the one part, or one offering to offer both, and I'll touch on that in a minute as well. I also want to show you that with this legend, now you can see that these are actually mapped back. The chart series within the drop down menus are actually mapped back. But so that's just a little bit of the art of the possible with Planning Analytics and Watsonx Orchestrate. Of course, as I said, we are going to continue investing in the Planning Analytics Assistant features, as you see with Forecast Insights and others. And the idea with Watsonx Orchestrate integration is the customizability, right? That was one of the pillars of Watsonx. One of the things that you lose with the IBM managed connection, right, with just the generative AI stuff, is it's all managed by us. You're connecting to our instance of Watsonx. But with Watsonx Orchestrate, you bring your own instance of Watsonx Orchestrate, and you then have the ability to customize the flows and the AI and the outputs, etc. Bring your own domain knowledge and orchestrate it across several different data sources and use cases, as you saw here. We have a really cool POC going internally, for example, where one of them is automating month end close for planning use cases as a simpler kind of within PA use case. Another one is actually leveraging the document processing within Watsonx Orchestrate to process an electric bill, for example, extract the insights via the unstructured data, and then populate the structured data into the appropriate planning cube. So the art of the possible is really, really massive here with Planning Analytics and Watsonx Orchestrate, and we're really happy to be a part of it. But let me tell you about how this thing is going to be licensed. So we don't want to make it. We didn't want a separate part. Have you figure out? Okay, now I need this part or that part. It's one part. And as Amendra said earlier in the presentation, we try to keep it as simple as possible. We didn't. It's not capacity-based pricing. It's not based on monthly active usage, for example. The Planning Analytics Assistant is a $30 per user per month list price, and it's minimum 5 licenses. So you don't have to license your entire workforce in the process. Well, it's only $30 per user per month. And now with the integration with Watsonx Orchestrate that's coming up very soon, you get both flavors. So if you want the IBM managed, basically, excuse me, I'm just going to go back here. If you want this, where you're connecting to our instance of Watsonx and you're leveraging the generative AI capabilities that I showed you, like the explain cell and the chart insights and the forecast insights and that part of the roadmap, you have access to that. And there's a lot of customers that lean heavily into that part of our roadmap. But if you want to leverage some of the cool things with Watsonx Orchestrate and the customizability of the PA Assistant and Planning Analytics alongside Watsonx Orchestrate, then you do have access with that same part. It'll be something you can configure in the Planning Analytics Administration UI, and where you can bring in your own Watsonx Orchestrate instance that's obviously sold separately, and you can configure it to connect with Planning Analytics to leverage it across your PA data and your PA instance alongside Watsonx Orchestrate. And so you do get both for the same price, for the same $30 per user per month. If you want to go the managed route, you have that, and if you want to go the Watsonx Orchestrate route, you have that as well. And this is my last slide before I open it up to questions. Is just a view of the roadmap and some of the things that we're doing. You saw that the Watsonx Orchestrate integration is a big part of our roadmap for the third quarter of this year. We're also looking at taking a kind of world tour of the assistant across the components of Planning Analytics. Right now, exists in Planning Analytics Workspace. We're moving it into apps and plans with appropriate commands around tasks in the third quarter, and that's going to start shifting across the different areas of the product. We do want it to get it into Excel as well, for those that are wondering, but it is a medium to long term kind of activity. You will probably hear more about the Excel piece in 2026, but we are working this year on getting the forecasting capabilities leverageable in Planning Analytics for Excel. So there's definitely AI spend and investment in that area. You saw AI Insights for Forecast. I demoed that for you as well. And I touched a little bit about the transaction log activity with the explain cell, where we want to bring in the transaction log so that if manual entries are created, I should be able to understand that that's where the change was, or that's where the value came from. If you look at the fourth quarter of this year, now we're talking more about this pillar here, right? Where where we're trying to make it a little bit easier to use the Watsonx Orchestrate flows. So we're planning on releasing our first prepackaged Watsonx Orchestrate tools in terms of things like run TI, open book, refresh, things like that, to make those kind of those kind of tools and flows easier to adopt. And then you're going to start to hear us talk more about our own prepackaged planning domain agents, like the scenario analysis agent I was talking about earlier, and the forecast agent, to let you more easily leverage planning analytics features and functionality alongside your orchestrated flows on Watsonx Orchestrate. And of course, there's the outlier analysis phase 2 that I talked about in terms of the overall view, as well as the bring your own outlier criteria. And then my favorite feature for the PA assistant is variance analysis that's coming up in the fourth quarter this year. This is the one I'm looking forward to the most in the second half. And it's the one I've been waiting for a little while. So variance analysis, as I'm sure you all know, is basically a calculation that's new minus old. It's your actuals minus your budgets. So if I give you a 6-paragraph summary on actual minus budget, it's probably not the most impressive thing in the world for you. But what we're driving for our MVP is around driver-based variance. So if you have a target like revenue, for example, let's say your budget value for revenue is driven by a calculation, a driver-based calculation like price times quantity, which is very common, then we want to not only tell you how well you over or underachieved in terms of overall variance, but we also want to tease out how much of that variation was driven by your rate or your price variance, and how much of that was driven by your quantity or your volume variance, just to be able to tell you a little bit more about how your strategy is working for your organization, and potential areas that you can look into going forward to improve that strategy as you grow and as you analyze your data. And so that's it for now. Things are moving really, really quickly. I'll pivot over to questions, but I hope everybody can see how excited we are to deliver on some of these features and functionality, and how exciting the roadmap is in that space.
Thanks, Sami. That was amazing, especially the orchestrate bit. So it's really, really interesting where the product is going. We have a whole heap of questions coming in thick and fast. We might not be able to cover all. If you're not able to cover all the questions today here, we will get back to everyone with the response. Ian asks, do you need PO license to begin with?
Yes. So you will need a PAW license in order to leverage the Planning Analytics Assistant as it's available in Planning Analytics Workspace.
Okay. All right. Arman, hi. How are you? He's asking, any plans to bring some of the Explorer capabilities from CA into this? Yeah, that's an interesting one.
The Explore capabilities from CA. Yeah, that's a little bit on the data science side. We are working towards that. I mean, we work very closely with the IBM research team on things like our forecasting is largely driven by research, etc. But we would love to hear kind of your feedback on exactly which features you're looking for in the Explore side, and we would and take that feedback as well.
All right, cool. I think you might have answered this already. Just confirming, this is not a preview. This is actual product that you can go out and buy tomorrow.
Yes, the Planning Analytics Assistant is available today. Forecast Insights will be available at targeting at the end of this month. And the Watsonx Orchestrate integration will also be available then.
All right, cool. And I'm also assuming that the price point that you mentioned will, as new features keep coming in, it will be included in the part number that we sell.
You got it. So
this, right?
If we go back here, so if you can see all of the Planning Analytics Assistant generative AI roadmap will be available for both. As you can tell, I use the Planning Analytics Assistant, the managed experience, and I was able to leverage the Planning Analytics Assistant capabilities in Orchestrate as well.
All right, cool. You might have covered this as well. AI assistant integrates with existing your legacy TM1 models as well.
Absolutely, yes. Any V11 or V12 model.
Okay. All right, would be great to see. So, and you've also mentioned that it's available on-prem or SaaS, whichever version of TM1 you have,
sir.
as long as you are V11 up.
Yes. Yeah. So it's available, yes, on-prem and SaaS. And on-prem, as I mentioned, it's a hybrid approach. So there is an exchange that's done so that you can connect to our Watsonx instance on the cloud. But your entitlement is PA local, but it's just not an air-gapped approach. Now, I will say one thing, Amendra, actually, you brought it up. With the Watsonx Orchestrate piece, now you do have an option for air gap. So think about your customers that don't wanna go to our endpoint in the cloud and want to own everything as much as possible internally. With the Watsonx Orchestrate piece, you can basically have PA local or PA on Cloud Pak on the cartridge, for example, and bring down Watsonx Orchestrate through Watsonx Orchestrate on Software Hub and leverage those as an air-gapped approach. So the Watsonx Orchestrate also opens up deployment options when it comes to that regard as well, Amendra.
Mm-mm. And with the commentary or the variance analysis that you're talking about, and being able to go deeper into the drivers and come up with a commentary that's more relevant as to why there is a variance, the drivers need to be in TM1, or can it be in a third party source, or SQL Server, for example?
For the MVP, it will likely need to be in TM1, but we do have plans to
Mm.
support external sources as well.
Okay, okay, that would be interesting. At the moment, we use Orchestrate for our clients that we are accessing the deeper analysis. So would be good to have it all in here. Arman's got a follow-up questions, which I think we were just talking about, which is any plans to understand drivers from multi-cubes? Why is my revenue decreased? And ability to look into my customer cube database, for example, um, and things like that.
Yes, that's that
Any
sort of
further
limited
comments on that?
recursion. That sort of recursion is something that is part of our roadmap. As you can see, like I mentioned, a lot of our features are either in phase one or phase two. Instead of kind of overloading the roadmap with as many features as possible, we're trying to make them as robust as possible down the road. So you're going to see them improve as we add new
Mm.
features as well. So even variance analysis, yes, to start, it would largely be on in the TM1 in the cube for which it's being referenced, but we do want to offer recursion capabilities as we go forward.
Okay, all right. And we've what about the another questions is around report generation. So would this be able to sort of auto generate standard static reports, or reports on demand in future?
So actually, let me go back here. So we actually have a feature that I didn't get a chance to show you. I was just trying to be cautious of time. It's called the exploration analysis. So the idea was we got a lot of feedback that a lot of the AI is transient, right? It comes in like pop-outs or within the
Mm,
chat, but it's not
mm,
time-stamped and it's not consolidated. And so we wanted to
mm,
deliver something that was both kind of able, something that was static so that you could extract it, and something that was extractable outside of planning analytics and covered more than just one feature at a time. And so we delivered what we called the exploration analysis. And what it's doing is it's loading now. But the idea being is that it pulls in features and information and insights across the cube and across the data within the cube to be able to offer those insights. Now it could take a little bit to render, but as it's rendering, another thing that we do want to talk about in terms of report generation. Actually, here it is. So if I open this, you'll notice that it gives me an executive summary about the cube with some information about the findings, etc. And then it has the references to all the kind of the statistics and all of the everything that fed it as well. It's time stamped. And the beauty of this is that as we add features, like the explore features, for example, that were being analyzed, this to me is as similar as possible as the kind of the explore and the data statistics features. But as we add features in that kind of context, this report is going to get more, richer and richer and richer, and we're really kind of excited for that as well. I also want to touch on report generation outside of this feature as well. So we're also looking at, this is probably going to happen more in the kind of the first quarter or second quarter of next year, but we want to be able to allow you to auto update reports. So if you have a kind of a PowerPoint presentation and certain sections need to be updated, we want to be able to let you update those with natural language outputs as well. And that's something that we're investigating as well. So we understand report generation is a form of ease of use, or as a target of ease of use. And we started off with this exploration analysis report, and we'll continue growing from there.
that's very interesting. Scary almost. It's really good. Um, this you may not have covered, maybe a bit more depth into what model is the AI assistant powered by, GPT based or IBM trained. So maybe a bit more on the model and the training
Absolutely.
aspect.
Our models, we train our models on customer approved data sets, and our own sample data sets as well. And so we do all the training on the model. They're IBM Granite Foundation models. And as I noted, every single feature has more information about the model. So if I kick off chart insights, for example, you'll see that the AI card all the way on the right-hand side of the screen will call out the AI model as well here at the bottom. And there's a link to more information about the model that was used in question as well. And this is just so you understand a little bit more about how that model is trained and what that model is, the use cases are. So every feature has that, and we use IBM Granite models exclusively. So that's part of the kind of the data residency and data privacy piece as well for the IBM Managed Assistant. Our customers are always interested in that it's IBM Planning Analytics with IBM Planning Analytics Assistant on the IBM Cloud, leveraging IBM Watsonx Orchestrate on the IBM Cloud, and that kind of residency and availability in one ecosystem really kind of helps drive the security and the guardrails around AI.
Awesome. Okay, that gives a lot of comfort. I'm just scanning through. Um, what's required to enable AI assistant in my existing PA apart from buying license from Octane?
Excellent question. So if you're on the cloud, whether it's as a service or PAOC, Planning Analytics on Cloud, then basically once you purchase the license, it's provisioned on the back end. So you don't have to do anything. It's part of the provisioning
Hmm.
process. Um, on
Okay.
For the local, there's an part of in Passport Advantage, excuse me. In Passport Advantage, you'll find an onboarding document that will walk you through the process in connecting to our endpoint, and it requires a key exchange. What happens is this. Basically, within the administration UI, you generate both a public key and a private key. Obviously, you keep the private key to yourself. There is a secure email, IBM email that you work with, where we take your public key and we create an encrypted access value file from that public key, share that back with you. That can only be de-encrypted by your public key in your own instance. Once you add that into the appropriate PAW config folder, you restart the service, and then you have access to that. So there's a bit of a key exchange for the Planning Analytics hybrid on the local piece, but the Planning Analytics on cloud and SaaS is all done through us on the back end.
All right. Yeah. Thanks. We've done a few of these. So if anyone is stuck or is trying to do that, feel free to reach out, and we'll help you out with that as well, with the configuration side of things. Um, I think the rest of the questions that are coming in, you've already covered, and we are also right on time. So I'd probably stop there today. And for the questions that we haven't got around to, we will get back to you and answer the questions, and also post it up somewhere so everyone can see the answers. Sami, that was excellent. It was really interesting to see how far this product has come and how this will impact how finance teams are working today. So really appreciate your time, and thank you once again.
Thank you, everyone, for your time, and thank you, Amendra, for coordinating.
All right, and I think we should do a follow up in few months' time
Absolutely.
to see how far
It's
we've
moving
come.
very
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah, yes. All right, great, and thanks to you and your team for bringing this to us.
Always. Thank you so much, Amendra and Sheila.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.